and welcome back to Training Tuesday. So I know I wasn't here last week, and I'm sorry that I missed last week because every time I miss a week with you guys, it feels like it's been forever. It's been forever since we've had a chat, and it's nice to be back and to have a chat. And I think I'm running like 2 minutes late because, as always, with the beauty of technology, I had everything set up because I was going to record this and get this all recorded and neatly packaged so I could use it later, this particular training, because I really love this particular training. And as soon as I hit go live, it said can't record. So I spent the last 3 minutes scrambling to like, all right, let's at least just do the live because I owe you guys that much. And we'll worry about recording the content later. And in fact, you guys can tell me later if this is actually recording worthy content and I should be recording this. But I think it is. I think it is because this, I'm going to warn you now, we're probably going to go closer to 45 minutes instead of 30. So if you're watching your time tonight, I understand if you have to drop off, but there's a lot of good stuff to cover tonight. This particular topic is near and dear to me because it is near and dear to the experiences I have had throughout my career. So we're going to talk about 15 years of me speaking up and speaking out and what that means. It's not going to be just focused on me, but you know what I mean. So, and hello, Christine, and hello, Terry. It's good to see you guys here. So, for those of you who have not joined us before, welcome to Training Tuesday. We are here every week live in the group talking about different topics related to how we accelerate our careers, how we get the next raise, the next promotion, how we have difficult conversations, how do we build up our confidence, how do we quash that little voice in our head that tells us you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not enough. So all those things. My name is Natalie Hahn, if we have not met yet. I am the CEO of Dirty Girls Consulting, and I'm so glad you're here in our group, Accelerating Leadership for Professional Women. And as my friends here, Christine, Terry, and Jill, hey Jill, are saying hello in the chat, feel free to say hello as well. Tell us where you're from. I use the chat as much as possible when we do these trainings because your comments, your feedback, your questions help me make sure that I'm answering your questions, that the training is actually relevant to you, and allows you also to meet each other and share. And that's the whole point of the group. So, tonight's topic is the exciting topic of the modern woman's 7-step blueprint to speaking up and breaking the boys' club noise. Now, these 7 steps work whether or not you are faced with a boys' club. You could be faced with any club. You could simply be in a position where you feel like you're not being heard, you're not being recognized or listened to. These 7 steps are helpful if you even feel like the problem isn't that you're not being heard, but maybe that you're not pushing yourself out there enough. So I wanted to tackle this topic. Thanks to all of you who also voted in the poll I had up on our page for a couple weeks, because that gave me a lot of good ideas and direction for where you want some of these trainings to go. This was one of the topics, and I chose it first because it's so timely for me, and I will tell you why. So, hey, Adina, good to see you. For the last 6 months. Oh, for those of you who, I think most of you in the group and who have been to Training Tuesday know this, but if you don't, I've been doing Dirty Girls and coaching, leadership coaching for 10 years now. Actually, 2023 is our 10th year, which is great. I also do still work in a corporate job in corporate America. And I do that for several reasons. One being I actually like it. I actually enjoy it. And so in my current role in corporate America, you can connect with me on LinkedIn and you can see my history and what I've been doing and what I'm doing now, Vice President of Marketing for a software division. For the last 6 months in this job, 6 months, I have been saying the same thing repeatedly. Repeatedly, I have been saying, team, we have a sales problem. I have data to back up my statement. I have Excel spreadsheets, I have charts and graphs, and I have swizzled those things 6 ways to Sunday to figure out how to best share this information. But the result of it is, the net of it is, I'm looking at my numbers. My numbers say marketing is killing it and sales is not. We have a sales problem. Every 2 weeks in the meetings, every month in the meetings, every quarter in the meetings, because yes, we meet that often to go over the same numbers. So every 2 weeks, every month, every quarter for the past 6 months, I have been showing the numbers and saying, guys, we have a sales problem. And in every single meeting, they look at my numbers and they go, huh, that's interesting. Sales. Huh. So what are we going to do to fix marketing? Have any of you been in this situation? Does this sound familiar at all? Because you don't have to be in sales and marketing for this to be a thing. You can be in any department with any other group looking at you, and you think they heard what you said, and yet somehow their response is like, we're going to look over here. Drop a Y in the chat, a yes in the comments if this sounds familiar, if this is one of the ways, just one of the ways that maybe you have not been heard. Or just you can imagine my frustration. So this has been going on for the past 6 months, and you might think I've had this solved, and it is resolved, and I'm going to tell you how, but I'm going to tell you what happened first, because that's important. And thank you, Jill and Terry. You guys feel my pain, it has been a painful 6 months trying to get this done. So those of you who have been at some of my past master classes and things may have heard me tell this story, but I'm first going to take you back 15 years ago. So 15 years ago was the start of my career in the executive ranks. And I was working for a different company, a much smaller company, and it was 2008 or 2009. I had only been in my role on the executive team for maybe a year. And the executive team was me and 5 men. And we met every month to talk about strategically, what are we going to do for the company? How are we going to build out the company? How are we going to grow, expand? What do we need to fix? Like those things. And in one particular meeting, I was very excited because I had this idea for how we could ignite growth. Now it's 2009. So I've been in the role for about a year. 2008 was the year that everything sort of crashed, right? The economy was not good, and businesses were still reeling from the economy. And at the same time, cloud computing was a big deal. You don't have to know what cloud computing is. That's irrelevant. The thing is, I work in tech, and cloud computing was the big, sexy new thing in tech. And so I went to one of our monthly executive meetings and said, hey, we need to be in on cloud computing. We need a story here. We need to get ahead of this because this is just going to get bigger. And this is one of the new market areas where we can grow. And we've been sitting here talking about what are new markets we can grow in. This is one, and this is big. And I probably said just those 4 or 5 sentences, and I was immediately shut down. Immediately. The COO says, Natalie, that's really not even close to kind of where we focus in the market to our tech. I don't see how we make that leap. That's not worth talking about. I think we need to look closer to home. No consideration, no further discussion, just shut down. Now, I was frustrated by this because I was sure that I was right, but I was a new executive. I was the only woman in the room, and I was the youngest person in the room. So I didn't push. These smart white men must know more than me, right? They've been here longer. So we have this meeting every month. We're brainstorming ideas. We're fixing business operations stuff. And 4 months later, a male executive says, hey, we should really look at this cloud computing thing. I think this market actually has some long tail for us. And the other 4 men go, yeah, we really should look at cloud computing more closely, shouldn't we? And then there was a discussion about how we might go after that market and what that plan might look like. And we left the meeting with the basis of a new plan, which was the same plan I had tried to propose 4 months earlier. So let me pause and ask you ladies this. Does this sound familiar? Have you been in a situation where not only were you not heard, but somebody else kicks up the idea and they are heard. That other person is recognized for getting the credit and for having the idea. And you don't really know, because I didn't really know, did they steal my idea? Or were they just slower at coming to the same conclusion? To this day, I don't know which it is. Oh, and Terry, I'm sorry. See, if it's a repeated thing, they knew what they were doing. In this particular situation, I didn't know, right? But it's frustrating when you think that somebody might be intentionally undermining you. Or in your case, Terry, if you know that your manager is intentionally undermining you and your ideas. All right. That was 15 years ago. And from the story I just told you when we started this conversation, I am clearly still dealing with groups of men who don't listen to me. So what gives? All right, go back to 2009. I am ticked coming out of that meeting. I can't figure out if my idea's been stolen. I can't figure out if they're just slower at coming to it, but I'm mad. I had presence of mind not to throw a fit in the meeting itself. I think partly I was also just too shocked. I was too stunned. I didn't say anything in that meeting. But afterwards, because I couldn't let it rest, and I'm glad I didn't let it rest, but afterwards, I went to each one of their offices one by one. Again, 15 years ago, pre-COVID, we were in an office. But each one of them, I walked in and said, why is this cloud computing idea a better idea today than it was 4 months ago? Why is it better now than 4 months ago? And every single one of them said, it's not a better idea now than 4 months ago. We should have started this 4 months ago. We're now a little bit behind. I said, okay, so how come we didn't pursue this when I proposed this 4 months ago? Every single one of them gave me the same blank stare. You know, that confused puppy dog, head tilt. You did? Every single one of them didn't hear me. They didn't remember that I had said anything about cloud computing. They were sure that I must have been mistaken about maybe who I told or how I said it, because they wouldn't have turned this down. It's a great idea. And I walked away from each one of those meetings, and at the end of the day, I thought, it's me. It's got to be me. So how many of you have felt that? That you walk away from a situation that has gone sideways, and your only conclusion is, somehow I screwed this up. This is what that moment led to. That moment of I screwed this up. It led to me paying more attention. I needed to pay attention to how I was showing up in a meeting that I could present such a kick-ass idea and not be heard. So here's where I started. I started with body language. Now, it just so happened through a weird series of events, it is a little weird, but a weird series of events, I met Janine Driver. If you don't know Janine Driver, go look her up. Janine Driver is a nationally known body language expert. And at the time I met her, she was a few years into her career as the body language expert. Prior to that, she had still been a body language expert, but she was a consultant for the FBI and the BATF, that's who it was, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, and the FBI, doing body language stuff. And she pivoted, a few years before I met her, she pivoted into making it just her own business, as opposed to working for government agencies. And so I met her fairly early, but look her up. You'll find her on Facebook. You'll find her online. It's Janine Driver. Just last week, she was on the Live with Kelly and Mark show. I don't watch the show, but I saw her clip. I know she's on it. But I met Janine. I worked with her actually a couple of times and started following her stuff and paying attention to body language. How am I showing up? How am I physically entering a room? How am I holding myself during meetings? Her and Amy Cuddy. Amy Cuddy is the one who made popular the superhero pose, right? You put your hands on your hips, you put your elbows out, you stand with your feet apart, strong pose. you want to meet either one of them, Amy Cuddy or Janine Driver, go to TED Talks. They both have TED Talks that you can check into. But that's what I started with. I started by paying attention to how am I even physically showing up in the room? Like, what do they see when I walk into these meetings? It was less about, it wasn't about what I wore, my hair, my makeup, my shoes, my dress. It was about what kind of energy am I exuding and how am I showing up? That was first. Second, I started paying attention to my words, to literally the language I was using. What language was I using to share my ideas? How was I verbalizing my thoughts, asking questions, things like that? And I realized I use a few phrases very often, used past tense. I don't use them nearly so much now. And they were not helping me. Phrases like, I'm sorry, but do you have a minute? I'm sorry if this has already been said, but could you answer, repeat, suggest? That's one. I'm sorry. Just automatically apologizing for even using my voice. The second phrase I used a lot was, I need just a little bit of your time. Can I have just a moment? Little phrases. I'm sorry. I'm very small. I just need a second. I won't be in your way. You won't notice me anymore. And then I'll go away and you'll forget all about me. That's what that says, right? That's what I was doing. I'm sorry. I have no right to exist. I have no right to ask you this, but I need 2 minutes because otherwise I'll lose my job, right? Neither one of those puts you in a position of strength. I was using them a lot. And there were other words and phrases that we all use regularly that are ingrained in us that immediately, just by existing in our sentences, make us sound smaller and less powerful. So I started paying attention to my words. So how many of you apologize or use other fillers like that? And if you're willing to drop it in the chat, what's your filler? I'm sorry, just a little, actually, things like that. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, Christine. Those phrases hit close to all of us. And that's the challenge. And that was a genuine I'm sorry. That wasn't an I'm sorry, but. Right? So once I started paying attention to language, I started paying attention to positioning. Positioning is, okay, I might be using language that makes me play small, but positioning means I'm saying right up front, my position is I don't matter. Positioning phrases are things like, hey, I know I'm not the expert here, but, or, yeah, I know you know more about this than me, you have more experience than me, but. We put a phrase in front of whatever our idea or our thought is that immediately says, you have the right to ignore everything I say because it's not important and I don't know anything, but I'm going to use words anyway to just fill up the space. We position ourselves in a corner that says, I'm going to be over here and playing small, so you really can't ignore me anyway. Adina, I love that one. Does this make sense? That's how we end conversations. We're telling somebody an idea, we're sharing something, and then we say, does this make sense? And what we don't realize, we think, overtly, we think what we're saying is the brilliance of my idea clear to you? When what we're actually saying is, did I use the English language correctly? The impression that phrase leaves is not the impression we think it is. We think it's the impression of, I'm reaching out and making sure that you're clear. I'm doing this for your benefit. What is heard by the receiver is, I don't know if I spoke clearly enough for anyone to understand me. We undermine ourselves with that one. Does this make sense? Unless you are giving very technical instructions with a lot of jargon, you don't need that phrase. You really don't. I next started paying attention to my voice. Not just the pitch, right? Or speak high, speak low, right? Not just that, although I did pay attention to that, but also to the speed, to pauses, to breathing when I spoke. Most of us women, especially when we walk into a room full of men, have a tendency to talk faster and faster and higher and higher and higher. Two reasons. One, we can get genuinely excited about what we're talking about. I do this all the time. I do this on Training Tuesdays. I get excited about the topic. I'm telling you a story and I get right into it. And my voice gets higher and it gets faster. And I know that. I know that. And I try to stop myself and breathe and go, okay, tell the story properly, Natalie, right? When we do this in a meeting, however, it doesn't come across as excitement. Excitement is when I'm telling the story over a glass of wine to my girlfriends. I'm talking to you guys and we're having a conversation. What I'm sharing is energy. My words don't matter so much. Because if I'm venting, I'm going to say, oh my God, that guy Kevin, he was such a jerk. Here's what he said. And my friends don't care so much what Kevin actually said or did. What they care is that I have all this energy around it and they're going to help me with my energy. Good or bad, right? Positive or negative. That's how that works. If we are trying to relay information, if we are trying to persuade, our pace, our tone, our pitch, our words, and our breathing actually matters. Modulating your speech so that other people can hear you and not just the energy that you're exuding matters. It's not being fake. It's not being faked. It's not even really acting, although it can be using acting techniques. It is making sure you are communicating clearly and the best way you can so that the other person can hear you. And that requires us to slow down. And we don't like slowing down, especially if you're a woman in a room full of men, because what happens when you slow down? Any guesses? The minute you slow down, or the minute you pause and breathe, just to take a next breath, to share the next idea, what happens? You get interrupted, right? Some guy speaks up and starts stomping all over your idea or claiming it as his own or just speaking. But we get interrupted. And so what this taught me is I had to practice slowing myself down, presenting my ideas more clearly, making sure that I was breathing, which means I had to pause. What would happen? What would happen is Kevin would jump in and say whatever his idea was. And just if you're new to Training Tuesdays, I always pick on Kevin. I don't actually know a Kevin, but I just like picking on that name. So it made me practice my boundaries in real time. Because here I am presenting my idea. I'm doing it at my pace. And it's great that Kevin has something he wants to say, but I'm not ready yet because I'm still sharing my idea. So it made me practice standing up for myself, claiming my space and setting the boundary where I have to say, Kevin, excuse me, I'd like to finish my thought. Or pardon me, Kevin, I'm not done yet. Kevin, I really appreciate your enthusiasm. Why don't you let me finish and then we can hear your idea? I had to. If I was going to start presenting at that slower, more powerful pace where I was being heard, because when you slow down, you know what else happens? You force the other person to listen to you. When you slow down, the other person has to slow down with you and take in what you're saying. Whereas if I talk really fast and I get really excited, you can skip some of the details because I'm talking so fast you can't keep up anyway. It's fine. It's totally fine. By slowing down, you are showing more power and confidence in what you're presenting. And it forces you to say, yo, Kevin, this is not your moment. This is mine. I will call on you in a moment. Thank you. Now, this forced me to make a mental shift, a mindset shift, which was I had to start worrying more. I had to start worrying more about showing up powerfully and doing my job well. I had to worry more about that than worry about being liked as the only woman in the room. And that's a real thing. When you are the only woman in the room, or you are one of 2 or 3 women in a room of 100 men, you feel that. And you feel that pressure. And our cavewoman brain says you've got to be liked or you're not going to survive. But modern woman brain is, guess what? I can survive on my own. It's okay. And being liked wasn't the most important part anymore, but being powerful and smart about my job was. So once I could make the mindset shift, and that was probably the hardest part, working on the mindset shift of I need to be powerful and do my job well. And I don't need to worry about being liked, but I do need to be respected. And being respected led to the next piece. So here's the next piece. Of those 5 men that were on the executive team with me 15 years ago, there were only 2 of them I met with regularly. Only 2 of them I had regular, one I had a weekly and the other I had a bi-weekly one-on-one with because our roles crossed over and so it made sense. But with the other 3, I saw them in occasional meetings, quarterly review meetings, the monthly executive meeting, but our roles didn't cross over so much that I had any regular sort of communication or relationship with them. So I started to talk to them individually. I made a conscious effort. I literally put it on my calendar to walk down the hall to say to Kevin, hey, I heard your team finish that project. Nice job. They did great work. I made it a point at least 5 or 10 minutes a week to go talk to those other 3 men about anything, about projects they worked on, about ideas that I had. I started asking if I could use them as a sounding board. Hey, I was thinking about this for the next executive meeting, but I'm wondering what you think. Now, in all transparency, I worried about that. I worried that if I put my cards on the table, if I shared my ideas, that they would steal them. Because in that other meeting, it felt like my idea was stolen when they finally listened to it. And I thought, I do not want this to happen again. I was worried that I'd get stepped on all over. I was worried that in these one-on-one sessions, I would reveal to them that I was not ready for this job. It was my first executive job. I was the youngest person in the room. I was the only woman. I was sure that I was not qualified. Like, part of me was sure I was qualified and I could totally kill it. And that gremlin part of my brain was like, yeah, they're going to look at you and go, what's this dumb little girl doing in this room? And I was afraid of exposing myself as that dumb little girl. But I forced myself to go build a more direct relationship. Now, it didn't mean by spending 10 minutes checking in with each of them that we became best buddies, that I knew anything about their life. I mean, I literally would do a 5-minute drive-by of, hey, I heard this project is going well. Great job to your team. Or, hey, I heard they've got new coffee in the kitchen. Have you tried it yet? I mean, random stuff, but just stuff to connect on a more human level, on a more individual level, and to give them the chance to get to know me. So this wasn't about becoming Kevin's BFF. This wasn't about knowing all about his childhood or where he grew up or what college he went to or if his marriage was in trouble. It wasn't any of that. It was just to make sure that I saw them and they saw me outside of the monthly meeting context. Because if all they saw of me was the random emails that went out because of my role and that monthly meeting, they didn't really get to know me or how I thought very well. They didn't get a chance to. So what mattered is they saw me as an individual, not just as a title and a role. That became a little more human to them, even if it was in a subtle way. And what that freed me up to do was to not feel like I had to have the most brilliant ideas every time I walked into that stupid meeting. Because I felt the pressure that I had to prove myself, and now these guys knew me. They knew what I was capable of. Excuse me. I didn't have to prove anything. I didn't have to have the smartest idea. I didn't have to be the first with the thought on the table. Following those 6 steps, ending with making sure I cultivated some sort of connection with each person on the executive team, changed everything. And I can honestly say to this day, that is the best executive team I've ever worked with. Now, it took extra work and extra effort to cultivate those relationships. It took me way out of my comfort zone because I am an introvert by nature. So frankly, I'd rather sit in my office and not talk to anybody. But that moment of my idea being represented 4 months later and approved, and I get no credit for it, forced me to look at myself a lot more closely. I had to acknowledge that I had things to learn. I had skills to develop. I had to figure out how I was showing up. So the first 6 that we talked about are your body language. How are you physically carrying yourself and entering a room? Because trust me, that is the first split-second impression everybody gets. My speech, what are the filler words? How am I using language, and is that helping me or hurting me? Positioning, how am I framing myself and my ideas, and am I doing it in a way that supports me as a leader or that makes me look small and not very smart? Voice, tone, pattern, pace. Was I breathing? Did I sound like a well thought out woman who's presenting a smart idea? Or did I sound like I was just really rushing through this thing because if I don't get it through it fast enough, you're not going to hear everything? And no, that doesn't sound very smart or spelled out at all. Boundaries. Practicing a new way of speaking forced me to carve out my space and claim it and say, hey, appreciate your thought. I'm not done with mine yet. Let me finish, and then we can add yours to mine. And then cultivating the individual relationships. Now, first thing I want you to know, those are the first 6 things. I said there were 7, so there is one more. Those are the first 6 things. This is what I started doing 15 years ago, and I want you to notice something. I want you to notice what I didn't do. Any guesses? What didn't I do? If you can drop it in the chat, any ideas of what I didn't do, I am all ears, but I'm going to tell you 3 key things I definitely did not do. I did not work longer hours. I did not work longer hours. I did not volunteer for more work projects and more initiatives to prove that I could do more and be seen more. I love it. Did not apologize. Yes. Blame. Exactly. Did not blame. In a way, you're absolutely right, Adina, there was no point in blaming, right? Did it matter whether he stole my idea or not? Did it matter whether I spoke up properly or not? Not at this point, it didn't, but I was going to make sure I was heard in the future. So absolutely did not do those things. The other thing I did not do, I did not work harder to learn more. I did not decide I needed a class on executive leadership. I did not decide that I needed to take another course, to get another degree, to get a certification, to prove to these men that I deserved the job. So I didn't do more. I did not do the things that could have burnt me out. And burnout, right? High levels of stress, high levels of exhaustion. Burnout is the number 1 enemy of ambitious women. Number 1 enemy. So I didn't do those things. So I want you to say in the comments, I want you to say the word no more if you agree that we are going to stop. We're going to stop doing these things that don't help us be heard. Working longer hours doesn't make you heard or seen more. Volunteering for more projects doesn't make you be seen or heard more. And neither does becoming the expert by taking extra classes and certifications. No more. We're not doing it anymore. We need to, understand, accept that doing more, thank you, Sue, no more, doing more and doing it better than the boys is not actually what gets us ahead and gets us heard. You're doing more, or you're doing a better job than what the men in your company do is not what gets you seen and heard. It's just not. Instead, I want you to focus on being better. I focused on things to make me better. A better leader, a more powerful presence, a smarter executive. Those are the things that made a difference. I worked on building better relationships. Those are the things that made a difference. Not working till 10 o'clock at night. Not trying to figure out what course I could take that was going to give me a certification that none of the other guys had. Yay, chill, no more of this nonsense that is driven by our need to prove ourselves, right? No more of that. So let's come back to 15 years in the future. We're now, right? That was all 15 years ago. I learned those skills. So now we're back to today. 6 months ago, I am beating my head against a very hard male-built brick wall because I keep saying, we have a problem. It's here. It's here. It's with the sales team. See all my charts, see all my numbers, see all my grids? It's here. We can see it. I spent 6 months doing all of those things. I spent 6 months trying to get those one-on-one meetings and build that rapport. I spent 6 months making sure that I was presenting more slowly. Maybe a little less irritated. I did get irritated because they kept redirecting the problem to, it's a marketing problem. It's not a marketing problem. I have the numbers. It's a sales problem. Can we please fix the sales problem? And I did all those things, and I was not successful. Was not successful. For this past 6 months, it's been brutal. So what has changed? What's changed? Because I said this problem was resolved. Well, first of all, something significant has changed in the work environment. 3 years ago, we were whacked by COVID. And COVID did change things. COVID created a work from home situation. My strategy of walking down the hall for that 10-minute drive-by of, hey, how's that project going? Can't do it. Can't build the in-person rapport that used to be much easier to do pre-COVID. So COVID created distance between ourselves and our coworkers. It created a different way of having to communicate. And that allowed us to have more silos. Sorry, my throat got really dry. Do you know the other thing COVID did? COVID saw a mass exodus of women from the workforce. I think, and I have to go back and look this up, but I think the number is that 3 times more women, I think it's 3 times more women left the workforce than men during COVID. 3 times more women decided, pardon me, this is not worth my effort. I'm not doing this. And they left. And post-COVID, we're kind of in post-COVID, right? Where we, especially in the last year, where more jobs came on the line, and sorry, I'm going to try to get my throat back. More jobs have been on the line, have been offered. More people are coming back to the workforce. But guess what? Not women. Women are not coming back in the numbers in which they left. So now we have fewer women in the workplace, which means those of us who are in the workplace, we have a much smaller pool of other women to lean on for our support. So that's some big things that have changed, right? COVID changed a lot. Changed the number of women. It changed the feeling women have towards work. It created this distance in this working from home situation. What hasn't changed? Well, personal experience, tech is still very male dominated. Other industries, I'm sure, are still very male dominated. When we founded Dirty Girls, we started working in tech and construction. Those were the 2 industries we worked in the most. Since then, still work in tech, still work in construction. I've also worked a lot with the medical, with doctors, with scientists, engineers. There was one other I was going to mention. Scientists, engineers, doctors. Oh, financial services. All male dominated. That hasn't changed. The other thing that hasn't changed is there's still a boys club. Now, just really quickly, a boys club doesn't mean there's, 5 men who go golfing every Saturday and they control everything. It might be. That might be how your environment's worked out. But what I mean by boys club is that we work in these environments that were created by men for men. These are environments then that are constructed with male leadership ways of thinking and behaving, which are not the same as how women lead and how women behave and how women react. We are wired to respond differently. We just do. When you put a woman in a male constructed environment, there's going to be some friction. There's going to be some chafing because it's not constructed for us. More and more companies are getting better at understanding that and creating, I would say, safer environments for women to lead. But most industries are still male constructed, male dominated, which means the boys club, the male way of thinking and the male way of leading is still predominant. And yes, there are still physically boys leading the charge. So what now? How do I navigate an environment where I don't have the opportunity for that hallway conversation or to grab a quick coffee. How do I get included in meetings? They're happening on Teams or they're happening on Zoom. I can't just walk by and see people in a conference room. So I don't even know these meetings exist, but they're happening without me. How do I deal with the frustration of my job? Because I should be part of that conversation. I should be. Just given what my role is, I should be. But I've been forgotten or ignored. So this is what happened. I told you, I did everything in those 6 steps. I did all those things because they work. Because when you do them, you show up as a better leader. When you do them, you build your own self-confidence, your own sense of power, and you become more influential. You do them because you can significantly change the relationships at work. So you do all the 6 things I mentioned. You schedule those quick Zoom chats or you hit people up on IM. You make a point of having those conversations. And if you're not invited to the meeting that you hear about, the meeting that you ought to be in, you invite yourself. We don't like doing that. It feels rude. It feels pushy. But you know what? If doing your job well and showing up powerfully is more important than being liked by a group of men, invite yourself to the meeting because you are doing your job. That's what we don't get clear on. We subjugate the intention of doing our job by the need to be liked. So focus on, I'm showing up as the most powerful leader I can be, and I'm doing my job well. So here's the deal. You make the conversations, you make the connections, you show up at the meetings, you show up powerfully, use your voice, you pay attention to your body language. And I did all these things and it still didn't work. So I had to do one more thing, the 7th thing. Sometimes to break into the boys' club, you need a boy. You need a champion. You need an advocate. And we hate this. We hate this so much. We hate feeling like we are not powerful enough on our own to make it happen. We feel like we shouldn't have to ask for help. We should be able to do this. We can do this, except we can't. And I get it. And I hate it too. But it's not just a man thing. It's a human thing. And it's a man-boys club thing. But it's not just that. Think about middle school. I want you all to go back to, fun days, right? I want you all to go back to the fun days of middle school. And I want you to think about any group of kids you tried to break into. If you've ever been new at school and you had to scan the cafeteria to figure out where to sit, what happens? How do you become the popular girl? How do you join the group of kids that are jocks? How do you join the group of kids that are nerds or the science experts or whatever? How do you join a group? It isn't enough to do those. It isn't enough to do the jock things. It isn't enough to do the nerd things. It isn't enough to be smart, to be part of the smart kids, or cool to be part of the cool kids. You have to be accepted by them. And to be accepted by them, what happens? One of them decides to be your sponsor. Go back to the movie Grease. Go back to Sandy at Grease, moving in from Australia, the other side of the world, right? And she got sponsored into the Pink Ladies. Your champion. Your champion is your sponsor. Now, we would love to say that as grown-ups, we're grown up, we're more mature than this, we're different than this, we're bigger than this, we don't play these games anymore, and it's just not true. Welcome to politics, but it's also just not true. Why are executives more successful at getting their next job through networking than any other form? Most senior level executives don't go to Indeed.com. They don't apply for 200 jobs on LinkedIn. They go to their network. Because it is about who you know. Because this is where influence matters. Merit matters, yes. Your merit, your value, what you bring to the table absolutely matters. But what matters more is that someone else recognizes your merit and helps others see it too. And that's influence. So you find one executive, one senior manager, one leader who is willing to be your voice at a table to a club that you have had a hard time breaking into. And trust me, things will change. Because 6 months, 6 months, I have been banging my head against the big brick male sales wall to say, we have a problem, to have them all say, no, it's not a problem, it's a marketing problem. It's not a marketing problem. Because if it were a marketing problem, I would fix it. But I can't fix this. And my partner in crime, by the way, at work, my counterpart, who started, I've been doing this for 6 months. 3 months ago, I went to her and say, hey, I'm banging up against this brick wall. How about you? She's banging up against the same brick wall. So we're equals. We're over 2 different lines of business. She's my partner in crime, but she's a woman. She couldn't help me break down the boys' club either. What happened was I found a new advocate. And in this case, I'm going to say it, I did get lucky. I got lucky that at the same time, I'm picking at the executive team to figure out who's going to be my advocate. And I'd almost picked a different leader, actually. And the CEO himself stepped up and said, you know what? I really need to get more involved in marketing. And he started scheduling regular one-on-one meetings with me and my counterpart. And he started getting a different view of what was happening in the marketing organization versus what was happening in the sales organization. He stepped up to be the marketing advocate, and in 4 days, everything changed. 4 days. 4 days, he changed a conversation that I had been trying to have for 6 months. So yes, he has the benefit. If you're going to get an influencer, trust me, there's no one more influential than the CEO. That's awesome. Like, take him. But truthfully, any male advocate would have helped me. The guy who was the runner-up, working with him, it might have taken more like 2 to 4 weeks instead of 4 days, but it still would have made it happen because we listen to the people we know, like, and trust. And when we are in a boys' club or a girls' club, we are comfortable with the people who look like us. And this entire leadership team is all men, except for me and my counterpart. And we don't look like them, we don't sound like them, and we don't manage like them. But today, because of 4 days of the CEO putting his nose in the marketing business, I am now having very different, very meaningful and productive conversations with the sales team to say, how do we fix this? I am not defending numbers that never needed to be defended. I am being included in the conversations that, yes, I should have been in them 6 months ago. Hallelujah, right? It's happening. And it's frustrating as hell. It is frustrating, but it taught me a lesson. And here's the nut of it. I told you we were going to run long, so I promise you I'm wrapping up. Here's the nut of it. I learned yet again, because sometimes we learn these lessons over and over, and so I learned yet again, I cannot control the men around me. I can only control how I show up. 15 years ago, I was very lucky to be surrounded by very smart, emotionally intelligent, and aware, curious men, and they spoiled me for any other executive team. Today, I work with some men who are just as smart, just as emotionally aware and curious, but I also work at a much larger company. So there's a much larger pool of the boys' club type of men who are comfortable in their zone and don't want to change things. So because I want to be the most powerful leader I can be, I do all the things. I do all those 6 moves to improve. How do I show up? How do I speak up? I evaluate on a regular basis. How am I presenting? What language am I using? What's the body language look like? How am I showing them and being the leader that I want to be? And for those men who are smart enough and emotionally aware, they want to work with me, they want to help me, and we do. And for the others, I have to remember that I may not have the power to move them, I can't control them, but I can find the influence to make what I need happen. You guys have heard me say this a million times. None of us are successful alone. No one. It is why you are in this group with other smart, ambitious women, because this is a community that can help you get where you want to go. It is why you have friends and cheerleaders and allies and influencers in your network. It is why you have mentors. It is why you have a coach. You have people on your team that help you get where you want to go faster and with better results. And if you can have an influencer who truly has influence in your network, use them. That's what they're there for. And there isn't an influencer out there who doesn't love using their influence because they know that's how they're of service. You will not succeed by yourself. You shouldn't have to. You shouldn't want to, because you are stronger and smarter working together. So your skills are body language, actual speech language, words, positioning of your ideas, your voice, your tone, your breath, your pace. You're taking up a space and defending your boundaries, cultivating relationships, and get a champion. Get that influencer who's going to break down the boys club wall for you, or any club wall, right? Like I said, I'm using the boys club because this has been my most recent experience. And I know a lot of you have talked about being part of a community, a work environment that has a boys club. But if it's just a clique of any kind, whether it's executive management or a team that you're working with, these strategies still work. Get a champion. All right. You guys have been awesome tonight, and you have borne with me for probably the longest Training Tuesday yet, which is why I wanted to record it, because there was so much to share. So do me a favor. If you found this training useful and you would like me to actually record it so I can share it later, just say the word record in the comments, and I will go back and I'll record this without me clearing my throat half the time. We'll get it a good clean recording for you guys, and I'll share that. If you want the communications misfire cheat sheet, I know a lot of you have it already, but if you don't have this one, the misfires cheat sheet, it goes through, I think, 8 different communication misfires. So those words like I'm sorry, but, and actually, and the one Adina brought up, the am I clear, right? Did I make myself clear? Those ones. Then drop the word misfire in the comments, and I will send the cheat sheet, and I'll resend it if you got it before but you don't know where it is. I'm happy to resend it. So misfires for the cheat sheet. Record if you want me to record this, and I'll send you the recording. I mean, we have the replay, but I'll do a clean recording too. And as always, dig in the comments. The word dig if you would like to have a one-on-one coaching conversation, not a sales call, a chat. We can talk about any of these strategies for using your voice. We can talk about any other challenge that you're up against. It's a short coaching conversation. It's free. It's just for us. It's just for us to drop my mic. It's just for us to get to know each other and for you to get some free coaching while you're here in the community. So dig for Dirty Girl Mini Dig. That's what we call the free coaching call. Dirty Girl Mini Dig. So dig for the free call, record for the recording, and misfire for the cheat sheet. All right. Thank you so much for sticking with me tonight. I hope this was helpful. As always, love seeing you guys in the group. Love chatting with you. Thank you for participating, and I will see you next week.